Among them is the San Francisco Bay Area, with its 7.5 million people.
The San Francisco Bay Area is particularly vulnerable to sea level rise because of our history. Although the bay is big, it's very shallow. 2/3 of it was less than 12 feet deep. So lots of it was filled and reclaimed. We're standing here on reclaimed land, and all of reclaimed land. We've already seen 7 inches of sea level rise in the bay over the past century. We know this because the longest continuously operating tide gauge in America is at the Golden Gate. So we have 154 years of data. We're just now beginning to realize with accelerated sea level rise, we're going to have to prepare and have a new plan for how we deal with it in the Bay Area.
If sea levels rose by an additional 16 feet per century, hundreds of thousands of people would lose their homes in the Bay Area. To protect San Francisco Bay, levees would have to be built on a massive scale.
The silver lining is the engineering will create so many jobs. Holding off the sea will be the major employer of the world by 2100, I think. This is going to be worldwide. We're going to have a damn revolution.
The bay's entire coastline would have to be defended with levees in order to protect it. But in the east, the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta would remain vulnerable because it's at or below sea level. The Delta has some of America's most fertile farmland.
The most important part is food. It's unbelievable the proportion of human food that comes from land that is at sea level, not necessarily right next to the sea, but at an elevation that will be impacted by sea level rising. Sea level rises a little, all those fields next to it, even if they're not covered by the sea, are rendered useless for human crops by the sea.
If the Delta and its farmland were lost to the sea, California's food supply would be in jeopardy. The Delta is also one of the main sources of fresh water on the American West Coast.
This is the hub of California's water supply. 26 million people drink water that comes from this estuary. That's a huge number. 2/3 of the population of California gets water from this estuary. If you raise sea level even a foot, which in our mind isn't all that done, suggests that you will salt up this end of the Delta, even if the levees all stay together, even if they don't fail.
If sea levels rise by 6 feet this century, local rivers will be contaminated with salt, and California's main fresh water supply will be lost. In the next century, after an additional 16 feet, the entire Delta will be claimed by the sea. But there may be a way to defend both the Delta and San Francisco Bay.
San Francisco is among the best, easiest to save. The most radical solution would be putting a big dam right across the bay under the Golden Gate Bridge.
On the ocean side, the sea is about 130 feet deep. Building a dam would be controversial and would turn the bay into a freshwater lagoon. But at a time of intense Using cutting-edge technology, huge dredgers could pick up sand from the seabed nearby and deposit it as the dam's foundation. The dam's shallow incline would ensure maximum stability against earthquakes, breaking the power of the ocean waves with ease. Vast pipes and pumps would be installed to keep the bay's river water flowing out to sea. The Golden Gate Dam would cost $2.5 billion and could be heightened to deal with any sea level rise in the future. San Francisco and the Bay Area would be saved. One region that may benefit from the U.S.'s sea defenses is the Mediterranean. It's flanked by countries both rich and poor that have thousands of years of history. The Mediterranean has a unique feature, a narrowing at its mouth. The Straits of Gibraltar are between 10 and 20 miles wide, stretching from southern Spain to Africa. A dam could keep the rising water of the Atlantic separate from the Mediterranean.
There's been a plan since World War II, for instance, to put a dam between the Rock of Gibraltar and Morocco on the African side. A dam big enough that sea level rise does not affect the Mediterranean.
But building a dam here has one major drawback. Every year, the Mediterranean loses 2 feet of sea level through evaporation that is compensated by the inflow of water from the Atlantic. The dam would cut this off.
In the case that you build a dam in the Gibraltar Straits, there will not be the flow of water from the Atlantic. So in the case that you cut the flow, so there will be a evaporation, there will not be compensation, and there will be a permanent drop of the water level.
After years of evaporation, the Mediterranean would turn into a stagnant saltwater lake. Eventually, the sea would dry out.
And if then the sea level would rise, let's say another...
Sea defense engineer Peter Janssen maps out possible solutions on how to keep the Atlantic flowing while building the world's largest super dam.
I looked at the surroundings. I looked at what may be required to make a closure. And then, well, I thought it may be feasible.
One of Janssen's solutions is to use the same building techniques applied to the Golden Gates. The dam would be 20 miles long and tower 1,250 feet above the seabed, the same height as the Empire State Building. Another solution is to keep the natural flow of the Gibraltar Strait pumped back out again, keeping the sea's salt and sea level stable. The world's